Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives and become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Radio Detectives. Today's episode is brought to you by the financial support of our listeners, and I want to especially thank Gretchen for sending along a donation, and we'll send access to our premium site, which is available for all donations of $7 or more. You can support the program at support.greatdetectives.net. Well, now it's time for us to conclude the Forbes matter. So here is the Forbes matter, part 5.
From Hollywood, it's time now for
Johnny Dollar.
This is Betsy Walker, Mr. Dollar. I'm up and around.
Yes, thanks for calling. Have any time this morning?
I think so.
If possible, I'd like to come over to your apartment again and take an inventory of the gifts that Sheldon Forbes sent you.
That'll be all right, sure.
About an hour?
Sure. I couldn't sleep much last night thinking about all this. I mean, he stole that money because of me.
You mustn't feel that way, Miss Walker. He knew what he was doing. You had no part in the theft.
I have the gifts.
Well, we may have to take those away from you.
I don't mind that. You said he tried suicide. How is he this morning?
I just talked to the hospital. He's going to be all right.
But he has to go to prison?
Yes.
Funny world, Mr. Dollar.
Yeah.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Continental Adjustment Bureau, 418 Elizabeth Avenue, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Forbes matter. More expenses, items 11 to 16, $78.40, cab fares, meals, accounting services, legal services, cab fares, and more cab fares. I made a comprehensive inventory at Betsy Walker's apartment and spent the rest of the day tracking down the places where the items had been purchased and ascertaining their retail values. Total, $2,780 worth of gifts, bought with stolen money. Betsy Walker also told me that Sheldon Forbes had made appointments to meet her at various times at very expensive restaurants in New York. She had never once kept any of these appointments, but a check with the Waldorf, 21, the Stork, and several other places revealed that Forbes had always made elaborate arrangements to entertain her. His restaurant bills came to $835. The florist bill, $670. Total amount spent, $4,285. Total amount stolen, $4,285. Century Styles Incorporated footed the bill in his unsuccessful courtship of Betsy Walker. Hello.
Hi.
Remember me, Forbes?
Sure, insurance man. Well, what now?
How do you feel?
Okay. You saved me, didn't you?
I suppose so.
Why?
Same reason you'd save a man who was dying. You know what I've been doing?
What?
Answering the questions you wouldn't answer. I met Betsy Walker.
What?
My job, Forbes. I had to.
How did you know about her?
I followed you night before last. When you got out on bail, I saw you go to the theater.
Listen, you had no right to go to her. You have no right to involve her in any of this.
Why didn't you think of that a month or so ago? It's the company's money you've been spending on her. I had every right, as unpleasant as it is.
I suppose she knows all about me now.
That's right, all.
Boy, I sure must look like the prize sucker of all time. Must have handed her a laugh.
She didn't think it was one bit funny. And, Forbes, I don't think it's funny either.
Then what are you standing here for, lording it over me?
I'm not doing that at all. I'm just here to let you know how things are at the moment.
All right. How are things?
Well, first off, we took back all the gifts you gave her.
Dirty skunk.
Don't get mad at me, Forbes. Get mad at yourself. I didn't steal the money and try to impress her. You did.
Why didn't you leave it alone? What difference does the money make to you?
Nothing to me, but it means something to my insurance company. They still want it back. And they'll get as much back as they can.
Well, good for that. What do you want now?
Your signature. I think I traced most of it down. You want to look this over? Go ahead. Those figures about right?
I suppose so. I didn't keep track.
Approximately?
I suppose so. You're pretty thorough, aren't you?
We have to be. Will you sign this?
No.
It'll help to clear up our bookwork a little. What difference does it make now? We've got you cold.
Okay. What difference does it make? Give me.
Okay, thanks.
That's all it means to you, isn't it? Dollars and cents.
Dollars and cents that were stolen, Forbes. Remember that.
You wouldn't let me forget it.
No, I wouldn't. You did the dumbest thing in the world. You stole nearly $5,000 trying to make an impression on a girl who didn't want to have a thing to do with you. You went about it wrong from top to bottom. You've acted like the great stone face ever since you've been found out. You wouldn't bother telling me about it. I had to go out and find out myself. Off the record, Forbes, what'd you do? See her on the stage one night?
No, at the office.
Office? Your office?
No, not exactly. Ellie was having a showing for some buyers from the West Coast one day a few weeks ago. For those kind of showings, he hires models from the agency. Betsy's listed with one of the agencies. You know, she acts and sings and models.
Oh, sure.
Well, I happened to be upstairs when the showing was going on. There were a lot of publicity people there taking pictures and so on. And I saw her. She was wearing a black dress, and her hair was soft. She's got a smile like all the sun risings. Sounds silly?
Not at all.
It's just that I never in all my life saw anyone like it before.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is with other guys, but she was for me from then on. I couldn't get her out of my mind. I found out her name, and then I found out she worked in that show at the Empress Theater.
Yeah?
All I had was her name. I didn't know how to go about meeting her. I just didn't know.
You figured a little money might attract her to you.
I've heard that's the best way to do it.
It's one way. Not the best way, kid.
Probably not. The best way I could think of.
What did you think about taking the money?
I thought I'd be able to stick it back. Well, I guess I really didn't think much beyond just meeting her. Having her look at me the way I wanted her to look at me.
What?
It was the wrong way to go about it, sure. But then did you ever think of my alternative? I'd thought of it. I pictured myself knocking on her door one night, and I could see her answering it. I'm Shelley Forbes, Betsy, I'd say. Clothes don't make the man, I'd say, while she sort of took in my tweed suit and the only coat I've got to my name. Listen, I'd say, I got an 8x10 apartment over on 59th Street. The halls always smell like cabbage, but I'm a heck of a fine guy. And I drive a 1946 Ford that misses a little, but it's good enough for us. Then I'd say, why don't you toss on your mink, and we'll go over to my dump, and we'll have a bottle of beer, and I'll tell you how much I love you. How about that? Some alternative, huh? She makes more money in an hour than I make in a week. I couldn't even afford to keep her in cigarettes. Lord, I wanted her like nothing in my whole life.
She might have taken you up on it, Forbes, if you'd put it that way.
Yeah? What makes you think so?
She wasn't impressed by any money or any gifts. More than that, I met her. She's a pretty nice girl.
Yeah.
Up until the time I talked with Sheldon Forbes in the hospital, I'd always had my doubts about love happening at first sight. After my talk with him, I was convinced that it could and did happen to him. I was sorry that he didn't know quite how to handle it. I was also wondering, if I'd been in his shoes, would I have done the same thing? Expense account item 17, $4.90. I sent a wire to my home office telling them that the recovery would be in the amount of something like $2,500, obtainable on the redeemable gift items recovered. After that, I went back to my hotel. I was surprised to find Betsy Walker waiting in the lobby.
Hello, Mr. Dollar.
Why, hello.
I was afraid you might leave town. I wanted to talk to you.
Sure, you just caught me. I was going upstairs and pack. What is it?
Could we have a drink or something?
Sure. Expense account item 18, $2, 2 drinks. For Betsy Walker and myself at the hotel bar. It was midday and there wasn't much action. She sat across from me, ordered an old-fashioned, and asked for a cigarette.
Thank you.
Sure.
What'll happen to him?
Forbes?
Yes.
Oh, he'll be sentenced Monday. They canceled the Friday scheduling because he was in the hospital.
He'll go to prison?
Yes.
Have you seen him since he tried to kill himself?
Just left him.
I guess he feels awful.
Yeah.
I told you I haven't been able to sleep thinking about all this. Well, about him, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Would he have to go to prison even if all the money was returned?
Only half of it's redeemable. The rest, florist bills, restaurants and so on, just gone.
How much does it come to, Mr. Dollar?
Short about $2,000, roughly.
If you had that money, what would happen to him?
Oh, it'd be up to the court. I'd say he'd have a good chance of getting off if he changed his plea.
Could I get him to change his plea?
I think you could get him to do anything.
I want to pay it.
You what?
I want to pay that other $2,000 for him and get him to change his plea. I'll make up the whole thing.
Hey, now, look, Miss Walker, I know your motives might be the best, but you aren't responsible in any way for this man's actions.
He stole money because of me. He tried suicide because of me. And now he's going to prison because of me.
But you had nothing to do with it, no part of it.
You may think I'm 22 years old. I'll be 29 next month. I'm not much of an actress or a singer or anything else. But I've been around this town and I know my way around. And I met all kinds. Whoever he is, whatever he's done, he's the first man I've ever known who actually went out on a limb for a girl he loved. I'm the girl and he's the man.
You're serious?
I probably won't remember his name a year from now. But that poor, stupid, wonderful dumbbell, he doesn't belong in any prison. He ought to get married to some nice girl somewhere. I want to help him get out of this trouble. Can I?
Betsy?
After all, he's given me something. Call it faith in mankind again, if you like. What's the kiss for?
What you just gave me, Betsy. Faith. Expense account item 19, $48, hotel. Item 20, $37, meals. 21, $15, miscellaneous. 22, same as item 1, $28.63, fare back to Hartford. Total cost of investigation, $363.51. Remarks? She got Forbes to change his plea. She paid back the additional money. He comes to trial next week. He might get a suspended sentence. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Remember, there'll be another intriguing story for you beginning next Monday night.
Next week, a trip south of the border where the flashing eyes of a dark-haired senorita spells plenty of, well, believe me, romance and trouble can go hand in hand. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by John Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Heard in this week's cast were Lillian Baeff, Sandra Gould, Jack Edwards, Herb Ellis, James McCallion, Parley Bear, John Stevenson, Howard McNair, Bob Bruce, and Junius Matthews. Musical supervision by Amerigo Marino. Be sure to join us on Monday night, same time and station, for another exciting story of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, Roy Rowan speaking.
Welcome back. Well, an unexpectedly, for the most part, positive ending for a character who had definitely made a pretty serious error. And, just a fascinating story that comes to the end. I think we'll be in something very different next week. But when I first listened to that, I kind of, my position was, listen to part 4, and it's like, okay, well, what's the point of, the next part? Is there anything to tell? Because we know how this is going to turn out. But they made this twist feel, I think, somewhat believable. So I thought it was a good episode. It was a remake of the episode The Lester James Matter, which was originally broadcast March 31st of 1953. All right, well, now it's time for us to take a listen to The Widow is Willing, Part 3.
Carter Brown, Mysteries. Adventures in excitement and suspense, based on the best-selling novels by the slick storytelling sensation, Carter Brown.
Have you ever sat in the living room with a group of people after an announcement that one of them was a murderer? It's not the most soothing sensation. To reassure myself, I reminded me that I was Mark Hunt, insurance investigator, and what else could I expect if I insisted on investigating insurance? But it didn't help much. The rest of them, Lila Goldbright, Roger Beavis and his wife Mavis, the Romanian Degrescu, and the hunk of beefcake, John Cross, sat in a silence that was louder than screaming. Finally, Degrescu got to his feet.
It is no use sitting here like dummies. The police must be fetched. I shall get the launch and go.
Now, wait a minute.
Wait for what, Mr. Hunt?
I thought we decided the butler should fetch the police.
We did not decide. You did.
Makes sense, doesn't it? If one of us goes, he or she might not come back.
Do you insinuate that
I'm insinuating nothing. I just think it's better that all of us stay on the island.
I think he's right, Degrescu.
But I do not cross. Who is he to order anyone around?
Never mind that. The butler goes and you stay.
I shall be back in about an hour.
I'm sorry, pal. You won't be back because you're not leaving.
Take your hand from my arm.
I was expecting that.
Oh, if you want a fight, I'm happy to oblige.
Michael! Stop them, Roger!
There's no need, Mavis. Just for good luck. Now, Beavis, would you like to get the butler and send him for the police?
All right, Hunt. But I don't think you should have hit him.
What else was I supposed to do? Stand still and make like a punching bag?
Go on, Roger. Do as he says.
Very well. We'd better get the police here before everything degenerates into a wholesale brawl.
Lila, suppose you and Mavis do something about coffee.
That's a good idea. Come on, Lila. All right, but what are you going to do about Michael?
Let him sleep it off on the floor.
That was quite a nice piece of work, Hunt.
Where'd you learn to fight like that?
Special Service Division.
Yeah, so was I, 9th.
Oh, Europe, huh? I was with the 12th, in the Pacific all the time.
Yeah. Negrescu had it coming. Poor Clem was right. That will was a direct invite to murder. And the thing that worries me is Lila.
Because of what she said, you mean? About being suspected of it?
No. Because she'll be next on the list.
Next on... Of course. She inherits, and that makes Negrescu suspect number 1.
Oh. He's coming too.
What? I will remember that hunt.
Oh, that's okay. Add it to your other treasures.
The coffee's just about ready. Lila's bringing it in.
Oh, great. Oh, I left my cigarettes in my room. Keep the coffee hot for me. In the turmoil and tension, I'd forgotten about the mysterious voice and the equally mysterious vision of Henry Goldbright back from the dead. I made the excuse about my cigarettes because I realized here was my chance to do a little looking around. I went upstairs and tried the door next to my room. It wasn't locked. I stepped inside and shut it quietly. The first thing I looked for was there, a ventilator in the wall separating this room from mine. Then I started on the drawers and the wardrobe and finally the suitcases. In the third suitcase, I struck it lucky.
Find what you were looking for?
Yeah, Mavis, I did. A throat microphone, an amplifier, gray wig, gray mustache, spirit gum, and phosphorescent paint.
The real little detective, aren't you?
It was when you told me you'd worked in burlesque and once worked with a magician. Yeah, nifty gadgets, these throat mics. Fit them onto the throat, they amplify the vocal cords and produce that horrible whisper. And the wig and mustache, with a suit treated with a luminous paint, provided quite an effective ghost.
I thought so.
Of course, it was your husband, Roger, who did the talking and the appearance, with the amplifier and the ventilator. Oh, you must have been downstairs turning on the musical effects, that Beethoven record.
That's right.
Yeah, what I don't get was why. Why the elaborate setup to give me the idea of a photo of Henry's murder? What did you expect me to do?
I hoped you'd mention it.
I still don't get it.
I was out there on the jetty when Henry came over the balcony. I had the camera with me. It was terrible.
And you got a photograph?
No, I didn't. I was so scared I didn't even look up. But afterwards it occurred to me that if Henry had been murdered, and if I had a photograph, it'd be worth a lot of money to the murderer.
So?
So I talked. I dropped hints to everyone about the camera and about Henry.
Figuring that the murderer would know what you were talking about because he'd have seen you from the balcony.
He or she. I wouldn't know. Then the next morning there was a note under our door addressed to me. It said if I left the negative in an envelope in the second drawer of the bureau, I'd be paid $20,000.
What did you do?
I left a note there saying that I wanted the cash first. In the morning the note was gone, but there was no answer. Then when you arrived...
You hit on this weird and wonderful way of giving me the idea that a photo existed.
Yes. I wanted you to talk about it, but you didn't.
Yeah, so then you dreamed up the gag of Roger playing ghost, taking the precaution of removing the clip from my gun first.
Yes. Neither Roger nor I figured on Lila being with you. Fortunately, he had the throat mic and used it to distract your attention and get away.
Yeah, but why go to all that trouble in the first place? Why invent a photograph that doesn't exist? You could have got yourself murdered, you know.
We needed the money. Henry withdrew his backing for Roger's factory, and we've got a big project underway. But it won't be ready for market for another 3 months. We'll go bankrupt if we don't get some money to see us through.
Seems a heck of a risky way of getting it. Well, I'll shut this case. We better get downstairs, back to the others.
You're going to tell them?
No, I don't think so. You've been a big enough dope to deserve it, but I don't see how it's going to help anybody. Besides, that gag about the photograph might prove useful yet. There was a gray dawn breaking outside, and the rain had come back. I figured that the police had brought it with them. The local lieutenant, a short, stocky guy named Wilder, who obviously considered me an amateur and a nuisance, started asking questions. He didn't stop for 2 hours, getting nowhere and covering the same ground so many times that everybody was sick and tired of it. Everybody except Wilder, that is. He was the original persevering kid.
It's a conspiracy. Here's Clem Goldbright lying dead on the jetty, just like his brother. And what do I get? Nothing but dumb looks and even dumber answers. Some of you must know something about it. One of you, at least, is a murderer. Maybe more than one. Maybe all of you are in a conspiracy.
Now, why don't you talk some sense, Lieutenant? I'm fed up to here with all the yakety-yak. I want to get to bed.
Don't you talk to me like that, Hunt, or I'll toss you in a cell and I'll break you with that insurance company.
Oh, nuts.
Much as I dislike to agree with Hunt, he is quite right. You have asked all your questions, Lieutenant, many times. I suggest you let us get some rest now. We shall all be here. There is no way to leave the island except by launch. So you can question us later if you wish.
All right. But don't think you're going to get away with this, any of you. I haven't started on you yet.
Lieutenant, you kill me. With repetition.
We'll take Clem Goldbright's body back to the mainland, and we'll take your launch too, Mrs. Goldbright.
But, Lieutenant...
Sorry, ma'am, but that way I can make sure you all stay here. Pleasant dreams.
Pleasant dreams? Is he kidding?
Now, there's a guy with a gruesome sense of humor.
He'll be leaving one of his men on guard here, surely.
He didn't mention it.
But we're marooned on the island now, and there's a murderer among us.
Roger, don't keep saying that.
I haven't said it before, my dear.
Well, everybody else has, and I don't like it.
I agree. It is not a cheerful thought.
It's about as cheerful as a wet Sunday in an igloo.
Personally, I think we all ought to hit the hay and get some sleep.
Sleep? I don't think I'll ever sleep again. Now, take it easy, Lila, honey. Come on, Roger and I'll take you upstairs.
Yes, of course. Go on, my dear. You'll see that you're all right.
Thank you, Roger. You too, Mavis. You're sweet.
Hunt, Cross, you're not letting her go with them?
Why not?
What if one of them is the killer? Lila is in danger. I will go after them. They will not try anything if I am there.
Hey, now!
Oh, let him go, Cross.
Are you crazy? I'm not supposed to have any brains, but the identity of the murderer sticks out a mile to me.
DeGrescu?
Sure. He's got that collector's kink. He wants those paintings, and he doesn't care how he gets them. And with Clem dead, there's only Lila standing in his way. Now, come on.
Don't bust your blood vessels. DeGrescu's the killer. He won't dare try anything with Roger and Mavis there. If it's either of them, he's there.
What if the Beavises are in it together? Well, you can stay if you like. But if I catch that DeGrescu anywhere near Lila's room, I won't be responsible for what happens to him.
I was left alone in the living room. I had a last cigarette and a last drink and listened for any uproar from upstairs. There wasn't a sound. I figured everyone's nerves had probably calmed down and they were all safely in bed. I finished my drink and decided to follow their example. It was pretty comfortable under the blankets with the weather whining outside. I was just dropping off to sleep when a stray thought slid into my mind. A thought so obvious that I could have kicked myself for not remembering it before. It concerned the non-existent photograph that the Beavises had dreamed up. Only Roger and Mavis and I really knew that the photograph didn't exist. As far as the others were concerned, it could be real. I turned over on my back and reached for a cigarette and started to think of what use I could make of that when something was added to the music of the weather. It was the Beethoven music. I leapt out of bed, grabbed my gun, and had just reached the door when the sounds came. I yanked the door open, charged into the corridor, and cannoned into Cross.
Lila! That was Lila! She was the next on the list, and the killer's got her!
Welcome back. Well, some would-be blackmailers have a lot more gumption than they do common sense. Pretending to have a picture of someone committing an act who is a murderer showed themselves willing to commit the crime, is a good way to get yourself killed. And that may have been what happened. We don't actually at this point know who was shot, who the victim was. We'll have to find out in the climax. They definitely left a lot of questions for us to have answered in part 4. And I, for one, am excited to see how this is going to turn out. So join us back there next week for that. And join us on Monday as we begin another Johnny Dollar serial. In the meantime, send your comments to box13 at greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter, Radio Detectives, and become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Radio Detectives. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.